Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. And whoa, what's that? Got a baseball cap on. Man, I used to play baseball, but I rarely ever wear a baseball cap. But hey, check this one out. If you happen to be in Shanghai, China, and you want to train in mixed martial arts, go check out Animal MMA. My friends Kyle and Becca, his wife, they run an excellent gym here in Shanghai, Animal Mixed Martial Arts and Fitness. They're not paying me to say that. It's an excellent gym. I love those guys, love their gym. Anyway, moving on to the questions. Our friend Charles sends this in, and I've answered questions like this before, but I'm going to delve into it a little bit more. Charles says, first, people will often say that someone has a strong jaw. A strong jaw. But what does that actually mean? What gives some fighters the ability to withstand more significant headshots than others? Is it their technique of taking blows? Is it something in their physiology? Is there something different about their nerves or their brains? Or is it just a strong, enduring mentality? It's Charles' first question. Let's delve into that. A strong jaw or a chin or all that nonsense people say. It's kind of a euphemism for he got punched and he didn't get knocked out. So why is that? Well, there are a bunch of variables. And the answers to all those questions, is it this, is it that, is it the yes, 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 no, 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 sometimes, maybe. Here's the nitty-gritty of it. Everybody's built differently. Some people have thicker skulls, some people have thinner skulls. This is fact. If you have a thicker skull, it's going to be harder to hurt your brain. At the same time, where you get hit makes a massive difference. If you get hit on the side of the chin, that's a lever that whips the skull around. You get hit there hard enough, it's going to cause your brain to slosh from one side of the skull to the other and hit the side of your head. So even if you got a thick skull, it's not going to make that much difference in that case. Get hit in the temple right there, right? That's going to unbalance your equilibrium. You get hit there really hard. It's not the same effect as, that whiplash sort of effect from getting hit on the side of the jaw. If you get hit in the back of the head, an illegal shot in mixed martial arts striking, the back of the head, like that mohawk area right between the ears, descending down toward the neck. It's a dangerous spot. That's a different type of damage than the whiplash or losing equilibrium at the side of the ear. If you get hit in the front of the chin or in the nose or something like that that cocks your head back, that's a whole different scenario. That's the brain going to the back of the skull. So there are all kinds of different things that cause knockouts. Now, if somebody gets hit with a hard shot and they don't get knocked out, sometimes it's a matter of perception. I've judged a lot of fights. It's something I do. I judge professional fights from time to time. I've worked for a lot of different fight organizations as a judge. And what judges are trained to look for is basically motion. Because you don't know what the other guy is feeling. So we have to look at what we can actually see. If a fighter throws a punch and there's no perceivable physical impact, no movement, it doesn't seem to move the guy at all, it's considered not that significant of a strike. If a fighter throws a punch and it knocks the head back or whips the head to the side or something to that effect, we'll jot that down as a significant strike. If a fighter gets hit and their feet go out from under them and they stumble or they fall, ooh, that's a significant strike. Whereas on the fighter's end, maybe he just slipped. So aesthetics makes a big difference to the judges, but to the fighters, it's a different story. So we talked about physiology. Some people are bigger, thicker in the skull, harder to whip around. harder to reach. It's also technical. Some people know how to roll with the punches. Rolling with the punches is a technical term. Sometimes it looks like you're getting hit, but you're not actually getting hit. Take the Philly shell, for example. You got the Philly shell, you're protecting your chin with your shoulder. Your lead arm is down, but that shoulder's up. And a guy throws a shot at your chin and you roll it off your shoulder. You roll it and you roll back. And so that power doesn't get absorbed into your chin. It rolls off the shoulder and the power dissipates into the air behind you. Whereas to a casual viewer, it might seem that guy's getting beamed in the head, even though the punch isn't actually connecting with the head. Or you take a fighter who's shelling up there, he's got his guard up really high and tight, and he's got his forehead down, and a punch comes in, and it looks like it hits him, and it kind of does, but it's bouncing off the forehead, kind of like the hat slipping off the head. All right? So this is a really hard bone, for example. If I keep my forehead forward, and my eyes up, but my chin down, instead of hitting all this soft, vulnerable stuff from the eyes down, it's going to hit the hard bone up here, and that power is going to dissipate across this hard, round, double reinforced structure, the frontal bone, the cranium. So we have frontal sinuses right here, 2 layers of bone with an air pocket in between, a sinus in between. Well, most of you have a frontal sinus there. Mine is caved in right here. I don't know if you can see that. I got a big hole in my head from my last fight. That's a very unusual injury. Mine was the first case in professional mixed martial arts. A couple other guys, dude from South Africa, had a similar injury about 1 year later, and then Evangelista Cyborg Santos at the hands, or rather knees, of Michael Venom Page had the same injury a couple of years back. A very rare injury because it's such a strong part of the body, very difficult to break that. So where you hit makes a massive, massive difference. So generally, if people are talking about a strong jaw or a strong chin, it actually has nothing to do with the strength of your jaw muscles or the strength of your jawbone, and everything to do with the time and place you happen to be in, and the time and place your opponent's striking points happen to be in relative to your face. Now, there was more to this question. Charles was asking about flexibility, I think. He says, second, I have very stiff legs. Okay, then you got to move them. You got to move those. If you're stiff, you got to move. Even since I was a young child, he says, I have never been able to touch my toes. Never been able to touch toes. I'm not doing that to show off. I'm just doing that to show you there's more than one way to touch your toes. I can't open my legs very wide either, and I cannot even do minimal resistance hip abductions without experiencing intense cramping. Hip abductions. You know, if you're doing it on a hip abduction machine, those machines can vary wildly in position and also effectiveness. So, probably a better thing to do as far as resistance training, strength training for your abductors, focus on some really basic things like squats and lunges. And yeah, that's going to work those muscles in conjunction with some much more important muscles, much larger muscle groups, and it's also going to train your balance and your core and a whole bunch of other important things you'll actually use in fighting. And additionally, if you're squatting and lunging correctly, that's going to increase your range of motion. It's a very common myth that strength training is going to make you less flexible. If you do it correctly, you're moving your body through your full range of motion, and it's going to make you better at moving. Moving makes you better at moving. Surprise! Doing stuff makes you better at doing stuff. But yeah, hip abductions and cramping, that's not unusual. It's really not unusual. I got a question for you. Can you sit in an Asian squat? Do you know what that is? Over here in Asia, it's very common that restrooms, public or otherwise, will have a squat toilet, meaning you don't have the Western-style sit toilet where you sit down on it like a chair. Rather, it's a hole in the floor and you squat over it and you poop in there. And yeah, man, over here in China, people are trained from a young age. That's how you poop. You squat, you sit on your heels. Ass to the grass, to borrow an expression from powerlifters and Olympic lifters. That's a type of squat where you go down really low, essentially sitting on the heels. And I find a lot of people from Western countries, from the United States especially, tend to lack that flexibility. And it has absolutely nothing to do with genetics and everything to do with lifestyle choices. If you try to do that Asian squat, sit on the heels, and you're inflexible, likely your heels are going to raise up. So, that is a pose that you should be doing every single day. How often do you poop? You should be doing that every single day. And the way nature intended you to do it was to squat. Might seem weird. You might not like that idea. I'm not telling you have to use a squat toilet, but you should spend at least a couple minutes a day squatting in that low Asian squat position. That's going to do all kinds of wonders for your mobility, for your hip flexors, for your abductors, for your Achilles tendons. That's a big problem. A lot of Westerners tend to be really, really stiff in the Achilles tendons. If you look at dancers, ballet dancers in particular, they tend to be really flexible in the Achilles tendons. Why? The first thing they do every day, they warm up with pliés. That's basically squats in a turned out position. And the grand plié, you go all the way down in a turned out position into essentially the turned out Asian squat. Ballet's a French art, so I guess you could say it's a French squat, if you will, but all the way down. And if your flexibility is optimal, your heels will stay flat on the ground as you go all the way down. And if you are doing something like this every day, it doesn't have to be all day, just a few minutes a day, it's going to radically increase not just your flexibility, but your quality of life. Your flexibility is directly correlated with your longevity, your overall health, and of course your quality of life. It's not just about martial arts and kicking higher. It's about living better, living longer, and living healthier. If your max squat is getting up off the toilet, that's a problem. If your max flexibility is sitting down on a sit toilet, that's a problem too. Charles goes on to say, I can't open my legs very wide either, and I cannot even do minimal resistance hip abductions without experiencing a... I've read that already. I'm backtracking. Onward and outward. Over the past several years, I've been dabbling in some martial arts, and I've been kickboxing for almost 2 years now. I've tried static stretching. Many people have. And many people have been disappointed with the results of that. Dynamic warm-ups. Made a whole video about that. It's good stuff. Do dynamic warm-ups. And I've been trying to increase my mobility for kicking, but nothing seems to make any difference. I am only very marginally more flexible than before. I want to throw some high kicks. Is there something wrong with me? Charles, that sounds pretty normal. If you want to make changes, you have to make changes. If what you are doing is not giving you the results you want, then you've got to do something different. And it doesn't have to be radically different. It can be marginally different. For example, sitting in an Asian squat for a couple minutes a day. Doing some grand pliés a few times a day. Being more consistent than you were. Be really, really honest with yourself about how consistent you were. Man, I was listening to one of my favorite YouTubers. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. Bazooka Joe, man, with I always stumble on pronouncing his last name. It's a polysyllabic Italian-sounding last name. But Bazooka Joe, he's a kickboxer. Excellent, excellent kickboxer. And he's got a great, heavily underrated YouTube channel. And he had this whole video about things he would have changed in his training routine. Like if he could get in a time machine, go back and talk to his younger self, what kind of advice would he give himself? And one of those tips was basically to go through a basic flexibility routine for his hips twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. And as a younger man, that wasn't one of his priorities. It wasn't something he thought about so much. But when you're in a profession where you're throwing thousands and thousands of kicks, it takes a toll on the body, and it adds up. And so, yeah, stretching, going through mobility drills, going through really, really simple movements on the regular, every day, a couple times a day, spending a few extra minutes paying attention to the parts of the body that are important to you, that you value, that you want to use in a very specific way. It helps, and it goes a very long way, not just to allow you to throw high kicks, but to allow you to keep doing that stuff for the long run. So yeah, shout out to Bazooka Joe. Please go check out his channel. Go subscribe to that guy if you love kickboxing and striking information. Just great, great stuff right there. I'm always kind of baffled at how the YouTube algorithm always seems to recommend like the same 3 martial arts related channels to everybody, and there are some great, great guys out there who are just completely ignored. And man, Joe's one of those guys, so go show him some love. So, Charles, my friend, I hope you feel more educated about that whole jaw, chin, strength thing, and yeah, focus on being more consistent. Try out that Asian squat. Hope it helps. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train. Hey fella, looks like you could use a rash guard. What for, you say? Well, they protect your skin against mat-borne illnesses, mat burn, and they make you look incredibly cool. But where do I get a rash guard from? Hey, have you heard of xmartial.com? Yeah, then what are you waiting for? Check them out right now. xmartial.com has all kinds of rash guards, from sleek and simple, novelty, badass designs, and more. Channel your inner Japanese cartoon rat monster. Express your love for bad puns and kitty cats doing iconic jujitsu moves. Hey, that panda's gonna hit the other panda with a folding chair like a pro wrestler. And this one makes your right arm stand out. NoGiBJJGear.com is now xmartial.com, serving your needs beyond just no-gi Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, find brand new equipment for mixed martial arts, kickboxing, Muay Thai, wrestling, and more at xmartial.com. As always, use my code Ramsey10 for 10% off everything on the website. Once again, that's xmartial.com. Rash guards, spats, shorts, and more. Links and discount codes in the description below.